You're good, Amy.
Great.
You know,
Okay.
Amy, I might like to share some slides after all if you do want to give me powers.
You've got them.
Okay, great.
All right. So, everyone, welcome. It's so good to see you. I'm Amy Antonucci, New Hampshire Peace Action um, Board Chair, and I'm glad to welcome you to our Peace and Justice Conversation series online for Monday, June 30th, 2025. Tonight, we have two guests with us, Isaac Evans-Frantz and Moji Agha, to talk with us about U.S. policy in Iran and Yemen, including a debrief of Friday's Senate vote on blocking further U.S. participation in the war on Iran. I do want to start with an acknowledgement that we are doing our work on Nidakina, the traditional ancestral homelands of the Abenaki, Wabanaki, and Pennacook peoples, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land, the water, and the people who have been in relationship across many generations. Quick reminder on our Zoom guidelines. We love when you keep your video on. We will have your audio muted to start with. The chat is available for you to ask questions in, and we'll, hold them for the question times. And later we'll absolutely do hand raising so people can voice their own questions too. So we're going to be starting. Isaac will be our first speaker, and then we'll hear from Moji after. So let me first introduce you, Isaac Evans-Frantz, the Director of Action Corps, which campaigns for U.S. policies to save lives globally. I actually met Isaac a few years ago when he was helping, through Action Corps, lead the effort that had Congress pass the historic Yemen War Powers Resolution of 2019. And that's really similar to the work we're doing right now. So I'm going to pass it to him to get going. You ready, Isaac?
I'm ready. Thank you so much, Amy and Doreen and all of New Hampshire Peace Action for hosting this gathering. I wanted to get to know who all of you are a little bit better and would be really interested to know what towns and cities and states you all are in. I'm guessing that most of you are in New Hampshire, but if you are up for putting in the chat where you're participating from, it would be great to get a sense of your locations. I'm over in Brattleboro. If I look out my window in the winter, I can see your beautiful state just out the window, and um, it's a 10-minute walk from my house. So I'm really glad to be your neighbor across the river in Brattleboro, Vermont. So it looks like we have folks participating from around New Hampshire, and I see also in Georgia and Missouri and Oregon. Excellent. So our Action Corps is has a presence in about 30 states, but we have an organizing team in 10 of those. We are campaigning for U.S. policies to save lives around the world. And I have a few slides that I thought I would share about our work to stop U.S. participation in the war in Yemen as some inspiration for the work to stop U.S. participation in the war in Iran. But I did want to start with the most recent vote in the Senate on congressional war powers. So you may have heard of Article 1 of the United States Constitution, which says which is when we talk about the supremacy of the people. This is on the the U.S. Senate webpage. They talk about the U.S. Constitution. They talk about Article 1 really defining the supremacy of the people. The idea that Congress's powers are outlined in Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, because of the importance of Congress being, although they talk about three co-equal branches of government, Congress is the one that got Article 1. Their powers are in Article 1 because of the thought of Congress representing the will of the people of this country. And what differentiating a monarchy from a constitutional democracy, one of the key ideas is the power of Congress to decide whether this country will go to war or not, rather than a single person. And that's a really important concept beneath this work of building bipartisan or transpartisan support for congressional war powers. And I did not get into this work, I will confess, because of some obsession with the Constitution. I got into this work because I was volunteering with Oxfam America, the humanitarian relief development organization, and I'm interested in human rights and in humanitarian concerns. But when I learned about the power of the Constitution to bring people together across right and left and to build unity for policies that will save lives around the world that are for peace, I got really excited, and it's been an uh, important document, and to be able to reference back to is the Article 1 of the Constitution that gives declaring war that power to Congress. So there was a vote on Thursday night in the US Senate on the Iran War Powers Resolution, which Senator Kaine, Democrat of Virginia, introduced. He's a member of both the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has been a leader on congressional war powers. And that vote failed in the Senate. But I want to note that all of the Democratic senators, except for Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania, voted in support of this. So all but one of the Democratic senators voted for the Constitution, for peace. Um, and one Republican senator voted with them, which is Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. And while, we didn't get the 51 votes needed, that was the closest that I've seen the Senate coming to actually passing some sort of pro-restraint, pro-peace, pro-anti, anything like this for a while, especially around the Constitution. And it's really important that these that the War Powers Resolution be used, because it's sort of like this to us, like that you use it or lose it. The War Powers Resolution, the first War Powers Resolution was passed in 1973 by Congress, and that was like the mother of all War Powers resolutions because that defines how, and that was signed into law. That I mean, that's well, it was passed, it was passed by Congress, and it gives it outlines how a War Powers resolutions work. And there's now going to be a War Powers resolution. There is a War Powers resolution in the House. My Congresswoman, Becca Balint, signed on to that resolution, co-sponsored it. And it would be fantastic to see people like Congressman Pappas and who's the House member you have over there?
Goodlander.
Representative Goodlander. It would be great to see them co-sponsor this resolution. And we have seen that there are members of Congress have been very reluctant to sign on to these things. But suddenly, when there is some strategic organizing with constituencies that they care about and respectful, credible threats of um, kind of things not going the way that they want them to go in terms of the PR campaigns, it can really light a fire under people. And my recollection is that Representative Chris Pappas is going to be running for Senate. And so if he may be particularly interested in what constituents have to say. And one of the things we've seen is that when people demonstrate in multiple cities the same day on the same issue, all carrying that same sign, the really focused message, like with the lawmaker's name on it, like papas co-sponsor the War Powers Resolution now, that they said that kind of, gets their attention. So I can share a few slides from the work that we did on in getting the bipartisan Yemen War Powers Resolution through Congress. And I know I've shared a little bit about this in the past with this group. But oh yes, but before going any further, both of New Hampshire's senators voted yes, and we weren't sure about Jean Shaheen or Maggie Hassan. We really didn't know. Like I was looking at internal memos from different allied organizations and about, where were people yeah, definite yes, likely yes, a toss up. Maggie Hassan was a toss up. Jean Shaheen was likely yes, but we didn't know. So that's fantastic and probably has something to do with all the work that you all have been doing. So before I go any further, I could talk for hours about this sort of stuff. But if you have particular questions you would like me to answer or to address, I would love to see your questions if you want to put them in the chat, or if you have, um, you know, if you don't have access to the chat and you want to raise your hand, we can do it that way, and you can speak up. I can also just jump into, if I don't see questions, I'll just jump into the slides. I know usually people present first and then they have Q&A. And we have Q&A built in. I like the interaction and I'm happy to kind of speak to whatever you're interested in hearing. So I'll share my slides here. So this is just a little bit about what we did in terms of U.S. participation in the war in Yemen. This is just about Action Corps. And, I think our idea of how we move policy and change the way things are is similar to a peace actions approach. Um, so this is Neda on the right, who just completed her 4 years with Action Corps on our staff, and she's now going on to law school to become an immigration attorney. But she helped put these slides together. And she's talked about, this is her when she was in high school with her friends. She's from Yemen. She lives in California, and she talked about how she was doing work passing out selling cookies to raise money to here they have chocolate chip cookies and other snickerdoodle cookies to raise money for a charity to help people in Yemen. But she wanted to do more, and so that's how she connected with Action Corps, looking at what is the root of the problem. So then more recently she's been organizing people. She organized this rally. Um, and just a reminder that Yemen is a beautiful place, just as I'm sure Iran is. I've never been to either of the countries. But sometimes when we talk about war all the time, we forget, well, actually, what's there? What's there besides war? And there's a lot. Tens of millions of people. Yemen here on the kind of the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula was the poorest country in the Middle East before the war. This is just the history of U.S. The U.S. began bombing Yemen directly in 2024. Before that, it was the Saudi Arabia that was leading the coalition that the U.S. was backing. But there had been a ceasefire from 2022, April 1st, 2022, until the U.S. began bombing Yemen directly in January 2024. And then that was under the Biden administration. Then the Trump administration resumed this past spring, and that lasted from March to May. This is the role. I actually got this slide from Massachusetts Peace Action. Brian Garvey there said I could use this. It's like the U.S. in the war in Yemen provided all these different things, everybody but the actual shooter. This is, if you think about a crime, like the U.S. is providing all of this. It's providing the mid-air refueling. it was providing the ammunition, it was providing the weapons, it was providing the airplanes, it was providing the targeting assistance, like all the parts of a crime, of these war crimes, everything except for the actual person who was dropping the bomb. That was Saudi Arabia was doing it. And then the US took over with actual dropping bombs uh, last year. Well, remember that this President Trump really got excited about the weapons deals, which really don't benefit most everyday Americans. It's really the CEOs of the company that get most of the profit from there. Oh, this was me. I was an activist in New York City, and this is Saudi Prince was Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or the Prince of Famine, as we called him. He was coming by, and we were really upset about what he was doing. And this is grassroots action here in Brattleboro. Um, this is just a slide about, I was talking about how we got the Yemen War Powers Resolution through, which one of the things to know about war powers resolutions is they're privileged, which means that any member of the House or the Senate can bypass the committee process. So usually committees go to or bills go to committee and die. You know, the vast majority of bills never get a floor debate, never get a floor vote. And one of the most valuable commodities that members of Congress have is floor time for their legislation of the whole body of Congress. You know, it gets media attention. It really pulls attention to opposition to war. And so one of the ways there are three things that are privileged in the Senate: war powers resolutions, joint resolutions of disapproval on weapons sales or weapons transfers, and votes relating to Section 502B of the Foreign Assistance Act. And Congress has used these three tools having to do with Middle East wars in the last 2 years, a year and a half. But in the House, there's just one of those that's privileged, meaning in the House, there's just one way that you can, when it comes to issues of war, that you can get a bill directly to the president, directly to the floor of the House, and that's a war powers resolution. A concurrent resolution, this House concurrent resolution, is privileged in the House. So that's what we worked on, as a war powers resolution there. And all these, at that point, the Republicans controlled the House. This was in 2018 that you know what? We worked on it in 2017 and 2018. But yeah, it's just 2018. And by the time we got to, this is a week, we demonstrated in front of Representative Engel's office a week before his primary. And like Representative Pappas or particular Pappas, you know, he wasn't particularly keen on, my sense was that he was not. I don't know too much about your representative, but I know that Congressman Engel, as the ranking member at that time of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, was not trying to rock the boat at all. And he had, you know, there was no messaging on his website at all about the US role in the largest humanitarian crisis on the planet, which is in Yemen, and which Saudi Arabia and the US were creating. It was all about the Houthi rebels causing all the problems. And it was all, you know, Saudi, you know, fighting the Houthis. And so we were able to flip that just by this group here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, a week before his primary election, got out there and took advantage of the moment and met with him the next month. And we had an hour with him, and he turned around. He co-sponsored the bill, and that fall he made floor speeches in support of the resolution, got it, and we got it through Congress. You know, this was in front of Representative Nadler's office, in front of Representative Pelosi's office. She was within an hour of that demonstration, she signed on to the War Powers Resolution. So Congress passed a resolution. The president vetoed it, but it had already helped prevent, it had already done good just by having the vote in the Senate. Because the vote, on the eve of the vote, Saudi Arabia changed their behavior. So we haven't seen the same sort of changes necessarily by the Israeli government in this situation. It's a different dynamics, different situation. But, you know, having 47 senators opposing U.S. illegal unconstitutional U.S. participation in this war is good. And now we want to build in the House. So um, let's see.
The UN quite right.
Let's see. How are we doing for time?
It's nearing 7:30.
Maybe what we should do is take a break from this, and I want to share with you our action alert having to do with the House because we had this big push for the Senate. Let me stop sharing my screen for a second because I want to be able to see all of you. And what I'd like to see is just a show of hands for anybody who called their senator or representative or emailed them having to do this Iran war powers push this last week or the week before. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for all you did because we made a difference. We got 47 senators standing up for democracy and the Constitution and against the imperial presidency. That's really important, not just for foreign policy, but for domestic policy too, and just for the way that we work as a country. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all those calls and emails that you sent. You were not alone. There were thousands of people in the United States who took action on that vote. What I want to encourage us to do is to continue that momentum with our House reps. And when we reach out to Chris Pappas or whoever is your representative, it's good to be able to say, hey, if you have a Democratic senator and they aren't Fetterman from Pennsylvania, then you can say, hey, my senator supported this. Where's your name where's your name as a co-sponsor of the House War Powers Resolution? Are you going to be, Senator Shaheen is for the Constitution, Senator Hassan is for the Constitution, but Chris Pappas is not for the Constitution? What's up with that? Why isn't he as a co-sponsor of this bill? So you can kind of usually it's the House members that are out there a little bit more willing to take a risk or do something that's lead on this sort of thing. But at this point, it's the senators have taken a position. So Chris Pappas ought to be at least as good as the two senators from New Hampshire. So, okay, here's this action alert, which you could actually send a letter right now if you were up for it. Even if you sent one already, you can send another one that says this is focused on just on the House reps, and you can send a letter. It's a new day, and you can send a new email based on what has happened already in the vote that happened on Thursday. So you can use our template, you can modify it. You can then share it with other people. You can post it on social media. If you use Facebook, you can tag your senators or your representative. So please feel free to do that and not focus on what I'm saying because I'd rather have people take action than listen to what I say. But my time is probably just about up anyway. Amy, should I
Yeah,
say maybe one more sentence and then pass the mic?
sure.
Okay. So
I have a question. Do you know the senator from Pennsylvania that voted against this? Do you know how much he's got from the AIPAC and other Christian Zionists and whatever lobbies? Do you have any ballpark figure?
I don't off the top of my head, but I know there's an organization that's tracking AIPAC. I've seen them on X, formerly Twitter. There's a group that's like track AIPAC is their whole thing. Yeah. And
Oh, go ahead.
yes, and I think this is a really important question. How can the president veto, Luke asked this question, how can the president veto a measure whose very purpose is to prevent him from going to war against a country that presents no threat at all to this one? absolutely important question. And I mean, I don't think a veto should mean anything. I think the fact that Trump vetoed the Yemen War Powers Resolution is just absolutely ridiculous because it's, it, you know, our thought was any other president would have said, "Oh, Congress doesn't says that I'm overstepping what's legally constitutionally acceptable. I better stop this war." And in fact, he already stopped the mid-air refueling when he saw the legislation coming. He didn't say it was, oh, because the Senate, Congress is making me. But, it was clear that wasn't a coincidence that he stopped the mid-air refueling of the Saudi fighter jets right, a couple months before the vote. So, it's politically important, even though technically this hasn't been tested in the courts. Really hasn't gone to the Supreme Court. We had hoped that Speaker Pelosi, once she was Speaker and it passed in the spring of 2019 through both bodies of Congress, we're hoping that she would actually she would sue. She had, as Speaker of the House, she had actually grounds to sue on this. It didn't happen, but we're really for using the tools that we have.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think that's the sort of question that really points to the fact that we need more democracy in this country. We have for a long time. Okay, so if there aren't other questions, and that is what seems to be the case, what I'm going to do, we're going to hear a little bit from Moji now, who's going to focus on Iran. Let me say a few words about who Moji is. A lot of you know him already, I'm sure, but he is an Iranian American Sufi monk with a lifelong vow of poverty and service. He's a bilingual poet and author, and he's dedicated his life to full-time civility work, he calls it. And he even left a promising clinical and academic career in order to devote himself to this. Some of the initiatives that he's been involved in include peace, social justice, democracy, human rights, interfaith dialogue, environmental issues. We particularly know here, he's presented to us about the Iranian nonviolence program, that he started Chambers of Compassion, and most recently, peace-seeking Iranian veterans. And I'm going to hand it to you, Moji, and he's going to be squeezed for time. I'm giving him so little time. It's going to be tough for him, but go ahead and be putting in, folks, your questions as he gets going, and we'll get around to those. Okay, Moji, go ahead. Great to have you.
Thank you so much, Sister Amy, and thanks, Isaac, for that beautiful constitutional context you provided. And I put in the chat a text that has a CNN report today. Which has a lot of basic facts of the what has happened, and also the link to peace-seeking Iranian veterans, as well as our proposed roadmap toward a global Iran peace agreement, which we have proposed to the UN mission of the Vatican as of Friday to make a pleading to the new Pope to please intervene before the fragile ceasefire is violated even more. Israel is already violating it by drones and small flying birds, as they call them in Persian. And so it's important that we understand the connection between what has happened to Iran to what has been happening to Palestine and the genocide. It's the continuation of the doctrine of discovery, the papal bull 1490 something, that gave the chosen people of God dominion over nature, which then gave rise to colonialism and settler colonialism and Christian Zionism and other forms of oppression, including Hindutva in India. Hindutva is the same thing as Zionism, basically. And so anyhow, the latest out of Iran, as far as my family, okay, before I go that, I'm wearing my black T-shirt to mourn all the people who have died in Iran, almost, well, so far about 1,000, with 4,000 people injured and 4,300 houses totally demolished or partially demolished. And Israel, among its war crimes, has been to attack the main political prison in Iran, the notorious Evin prison, in which over 70 mostly civilians, including families of prisoners, of political prisoners, have been killed. To me, that's anti-Semitism. When Israel attacks defenseless prisoners, especially political prisoners in Iran, that's even more disgusting, or just as disgusting, as the many hospitals and the many, many ambulances they attacked in the so-called 12-day war. And so it's important that we connect these to, to the fact that barbarism in the name of Christianity, Judaism, or any other religion should be condemned, and that we need to stand up for nonviolence. I'm a Muslim, I'm supposed to be a terrorist, but I just happen to be a nonviolence activist. And the other reason I am wearing my black T-shirt is it is a Democratic Socialist of America T-shirt, and I am celebrating the fact that Zohran Mamdani won the primary in New York, and he has been endorsed by Bernie Sanders and AOC and other heroes of nonviolence in America. So there is a little bit of celebration in this black T-shirt, but most of it is because of my mourning. And I don't have a whole lot of time, but I want to, and I've mentioned this in my previous talks, including here, about Iranian nonviolence, that Dr. Mossadegh of Iran, the democratic socialist, if you will, who was overthrown in the 1953 CIA MI6 coup, he said, which killed Iran's secular democracy, he said after the coup, internal despotism and external colonialism are two sides of the same coin. Either they need one another as friends or as enemies. So what has happened as a result of this savage attack by Israel and US on Iran, the most right wing of the fundamentalists in Iran have become empowered, because they say, see, we told you, America is the great Satan, and Israel and Jews are evil. Internal despotism and external colonialism are two sides of the same coin. They are interdependent. They need one another. And that dynamic is extremely important to understand. And of course, it's not in the CNN analytic report that I have just posted up in the chat. And so we need to understand that the issues of peace or war and peace, the issues of destruction of Mother Earth, issues of social justice, issues of human rights and women's and whatever other good cause. These are interconnected issues. We need to work together, and which is why I have put together, as Amy mentioned, the intersectional circles or chambers of compassion, so that the civil society can become empowered. The only way to resist the attack on American, what remains of American democracy, is we the people to resist nonviolently. And in order to resist nonviolently against oppression, we need to work together and empower one another. The last thing I want to say in a very few minutes I've been given, and then we can talk in the Q&A, is that I was in 2003, a few weeks before the US attacked Iraq. I was part in San Francisco. I was part of a interfaith leaders, as they called us. I'm a Sufi monk, so I was called an interfaith leader. I had created a nonprofit for interfaith dialogue, and as I was chanting along with other brothers and sisters from different religions, we were chanting together internal repression, external aggression, external aggression, internal repression. And as we were chanting in San Francisco at the corner of Market and Sansom Street, and we had a die-in, by the way, in the middle of the intersection, but as we were chanting internal repression and external aggression, I was reminded of Dr. Mossadegh's internal despotism and external colonialism are two sides of the same coin, especially when they need one another as enemies. And so what Isaac talked about in terms of the assault on the American, whatever remains of American democracy, which has been decimated by money and power, by corporate power, we need to understand that the coup that people thought in 1953 overthrew Iran, killed Iran's democracy by overthrowing Dr. Mossadegh, that the chickens have come to roost in the form of Trump, and Trump is a symptom. We should not scapegoat Trump, or we should not scapegoat Netanyahu. That's another narrative. People are saying it's only Netanyahu that is horrible. No, we are dealing with colonialism, with its many different manifestations, and that colonialism has come home to the global north in the so-called civilized countries, such as the United States. So thank you, and I'd be more than happy to share with you my thoughts and the pain of my heart. As far as my family is concerned, fortunately, my family, they are all alive. One of my cousins lost her house in one of the many attacks of Israel, and that Natanz, Iran's main enrichment facility, is my hometown, which has been, I hope it has not been the town at least, or the surrounding villages to the enrichment facility. I hope they haven't been forever contaminated with nuclear pollution. So, but fortunately, my family and relatives, some of them live in Natanz, have not been killed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moji, for sharing all of that. First, there is a question right here I'll jump into, and then folks, go ahead and use the chat to put in questions for either of tonight's presenters. Here, Peter, okay, so Peter is asking, what was the purpose of the attack on the prison that you spoke of. And I'm going to clarify, personally, I'd like to know both the stated purpose, if there is one, and then what you think the real purpose is, because I'm sure they're two different things. So Moji, do you want to take that?
Oh, the stated propaganda has been that we were trying to free prisoners, and we thought that if we hit the entrance, that we would free prisoners, and but the main purpose was to bloody the regime even more in the middle of the war, in order to provoke the regime into doing horrible things, so that it would be used as pretext for Israel's continued genocide and aggression. And that the but what has happened is that the people in Iran, especially when they saw defenseless prisoners being, I mean, these are political prisoners that have been displaced, and now they are in horrible conditions in other prisons. And when people saw Israel attack even a prison and a hospital and many hospitals, they have, in a very familiar response of quote unquote rallying around the flag, they have unfortunately, some of them have said that the regime was right, that the US and Israel are savages, otherwise they wouldn't hit a prison. And some people, unfortunately, are calling for Iran to develop the nuclear weapon that so far the so-called supreme leader has said it is anti-Islam, which it is, of course. But some people are saying that in order to have real deterrence, we need to become like North Korea. And they point to North Korea as an example, that it is starving its own people, the regime there, but it hasn't been attacked.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Other questions? Remember, you can raise your hand with a raise hand function, and then I will be able to speak to you. And Isaac and Moji, if you see anything in the chat that you want to speak to, I'll mention Luke says that he was shocked at Israel's ability to precision target military and scientific leaders. I don't know if anyone, okay, wait, hold on.
Okay. Well, I thank Walt that says, very good, Mr. Moji Agha. People call me Brother Moji. I'm a monk. I'm a dervish. So thank you, Brother Walt. The question that Bree is asking, do people of Iran want different government leadership? The answer is 80% of the Iranian people, including myself, are against internal despotism, especially when it pretends to be religious. But among the political prisoners, that one of them, Mustafa Tajzadeh, he is one of the Iran's Nelson Mandelas, who survived the attack on Evin prison, and other political prisoners. They have said, we want to paraphrase what they wrote in their communique or statement out of the other prison, now that they have been shackled into, that yes, we want to be freed from internal despotism, but not with the hands of external colonialism. So that's something that is a lesson for people in this country. I am an Iranian American. Yes, we want to resist the fascism that Trump is bringing, with its minions, including Israel, that are visiting upon this country. But as we resist internal despotism in this country, we should not resort to violence, because, as Gandhi said, the other side has bigger guns. And and I say this as a Muslim, nonviolent, in other words, Muslim means nonviolence. If as nonviolence people, if we resort to violence to resist violence, then it's like we lose the only moral high ground that we have, and the world becomes a jungle. I don't want to live in a jungle. So, and as far as people of Iran wanting different government, I do have an in absentia execution order by the Circuit number 15 of the so-called Revolutionary Court in Iran. My crime, warring against God. They say I am warring against God, and I'm saying no, I am resisting people who pretend to be the chosen people. Reference Israel. I am resisting people who say they are the chosen people of God, and in the process they are abusing God and anything sacred. So, but I have in terms of wanting a democracy that has the welfare of the people of Iran in mind, and the long-term survival of not only the country, but also the prospering of the people. Yes, I want a different kind of governance, but as Tadzadeh, one of Iran's Nelson Mandela's, who survived the attack by 5 meters, his cell was 5 meters away from where the Israeli bomb fell. He said, yes, we want to resist internal despotism, but thank you, external colonialism, we don't want it to become, we don't want so-called freedom and democracy in your hands, through your hands. So we don't want the US and Israel to export democracy to Iran with their savagery and bombs.
Got it. Thank you, Moji.
Thank you.
That's very helpful, and yeah, folks are agreeing and understanding that in the chat. That in fact, it's a great way for an unpopular regime to get people to rally around them, to be attacked from outside, and to embroil the country in the war. We see this a lot. It happens here. Okay. Isaac, could you speak to do you want to speak to the action alert there at all? Or is this what you were?
Before doing that, let me say something that Najla is saying. Why isn't Iran publicizing the damage that it inflicted on Israel? The reason is the propaganda media in the so-called civilized West is already doing that plenty. So the regime needs to publicize the damage the people of Iran suffered.
Okay. One thing I will say is, it seems like once again, and this is sort of what war is, a lot of folks in power fighting amongst themselves, and all the people who just want to live their lives are the ones that really suffer. And this is what we hope people will grasp more and more, that war as a way to solve problems, it doesn't work. and the people who suffer, and now the planet. I think we're seeing more, understanding more and more that if we continue to use bombs and war, well, then we've lost the climate, the battle to shift the climate back to something we can live in.
One thing that I see Bill and Sandra are referring to this so-called Professor Mohammad Marandi, who only publicizes John Mersheimer, Professor Mersheimer's part of what Mersheimer is saying. Mohammad Marandi is one of those extremists, so-called Islamic fundamentalists that have been empowered by Israeli savage attacks on Iran. He has said, we don't believe in democracy. Our government is the government of God on earth. We don't need people's votes as the source of the legitimacy of our government of God. And abusing John Mersheimer's analysis, Mersheimer is talking about, realism, except that he says the regime in Iran needs to reform its ways. So Marandi is a propagandist that is serving Israel.
Okay, thanks for talking about that. Okay, we are going to be wrapping up here in a minute. Isaac, did you want to say any more? Go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I want to just say, Moji, thank you so much for sharing so much information and perspective, and for sharing about your own connection. Um, I I just it's a gift, and I I'm just humbled by your sharing. So thank you for doing that. And I just want to also share that I am committed to continuing to protest this war and the US's role in this war for as long as the US continues to show aggression toward Iran, and for as long as I'm able or needed to do that. So you have my commitment and to do that, and I know that there are a lot of people on this call who are very deeply committed and who care deeply. Thank you all for being together in this difficult moment. I want to also give a shout out to Bree, who sent a letter just now. If other people send letters and you want to put a note in the chat, this is a great opportunity to take that action. Action gives me hope and helps me feel more agency. Oh, great. Wow, lots of people are sending letters tonight. This is fantastic. Thank you, Kim, Joy, Doreen, Kevin, for all sending letters. I also posted an announcement of a gathering I saw Paul here is in Keene, and maybe there are others. Anybody else in southwestern New Hampshire here? Um, oh, great. Marcus and see Paul's hand. Maybe there are others as well. If you'd like to come have breakfast with our Action Corps Vermont team on the border between the westernmost point of New Hampshire and is right next to Brattleboro. So, Paul, if you want to come over on July 4th, there's information I just shared in the chat. I shared the Facebook event, but I also shared my email address, and happy to follow up with you individually if you want to share. I see you're raising your hand. If you want to stay after, I can also stay on to chat more about that. If if you because it sounds like we need to wrap up, Amy, or is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So
Um,
go ahead.
oh, just the final point that I want to make is that the way that I see that we're going to win the policies changes that we need is to build connections with folks who are not, across organizations and across political ideologies. So there's some activists that got this Defend the Guard initiative through the New Hampshire State House, which was, my sense is they're mostly libertarian leaning veterans, folks who this Defend the Guard initiative, saying that unless there's a declaration of war per Article 1 of the Constitution, the New Hampshire National Guard will not be shall not be deployed to combat around the world. And we know that half of the National Guard and half of the troops deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq were members of the National Guard. So that's a serious threat to it's a serious grassroots movement, and it's been an incredible initiative. And I just think that there's potential for collaboration there, and would welcome opportunities to work further with New Hampshire Peace Action and folks who are doing that work around in protecting the National Guard from deployment.
Great. Yeah, thanks. So I will comment that we will keep, after we finish and stop the recording, folks can stay a few extra minutes to do some of this networking. But I'm going to officially get us wrapped up here. I have some things to share. The first one being a thank you to everyone for coming, and a special thanks to Isaac and Moji for preparing and being here, for sharing their experience and their expertise. We really, it's very useful. We thank you. I want to mention that the series is free and open to everyone. That said, it does mean a lot to us when you donate and keep us going that way. nhpeaceaction.org/donate. It's in the chat as well. And I want to let you know, we really want you to stay in touch with us. Again, nhpeaceaction.org. You can learn more about what we're doing, what we're working on, events we're planning. And let me just tell you a few of the things that are coming right up. In person, our Ceasefire Now vigils continue. Wednesday, July 2nd, 2 to 3 p.m. will be at Representative Pappas's office in Dover, New Hampshire, with the asks, well, actually, this plus continued focus on Palestine and the crisis there. Thursday, July 3rd, noon to 1, City Plaza, Concord, New Hampshire. There will be a ceasefire vigil. Then Wednesday, July 9th, 2 to 3 will be at Senator Shaheen's Dover office. We get to deliver a thank you to her for her vote on Friday, as well as asking her to keep it up and do more. On Sunday, July 6th at 3 p.m., New Hampshire Peace Action is co-sponsoring the Open Democracy Annual Seacoast Walk with the theme, Steps Toward a Democracy Money Can't Buy. It starts at Rock Street Park in Portsmouth with speakers, music, and marching. We also hope people know that the next major demonstration throughout the U.S. is scheduled for July 17th with the theme of Good Trouble Lives On. And goodtroubleliveson.org can help you find an event near you. We know plenty are coming together in New Hampshire. So I also want to mention that our July